All right, we are live. Welcome everybody to another edition of Deconversion Stories. And this time it's another try with Forsaking Faith. I have Heather and Christine with me here today. We sort of were talking a little bit the last time before everything bit the dust on me, and I had to basically just shut it down. I was like, screw this, I'll try this again. But we're back, and we're going to hear the deconversion stories of both these lovely ladies. So grab some popcorn and a beer and settle in, and we'll get right into it. So which one of you two guys wants to go first? Actually, before we do that, let's do some promo for your guys' websites and stuff. And by the way, I have the links in the description below, but let's let these ladies talk about your site and what you guys do there.
Sure. Do you want me to go, Christine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we are Forsaking Faith, and we have a podcast, and there are several episodes already up on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And we are just this last week, we started releasing our new season for this summer. And so you can look out for that one as well. We just had one that we did on sex and relationships, and we have a couple of fun ones that are coming up. One that's on mental health and in relation to deconversion, one that's on our understandings of fairness and order in relation to deconversion. So anyway, so we're Forsaking Faith. You can find us on Twitter at Forsaking Faith, and you can also email us, forsakingfaith@gmail.com, and we are on Facebook, Forsaking Faith. Do you want to add anything?
So if you look at Forsaking Faith anywhere, you will find, actually you'll probably get this quote that says, forsaking all others, like something faith, blah, blah, blah. That's a Christian quote. So try to avoid that and turn your eyes toward. So yeah, nothing to add except that we are a podcast, which is, you don't get to see us.
Well, they do today.
They do today, which is exciting. But yeah, and we also have a show called Women of Deconversion.
Yes,
where we talk about was when we entered the atheist world, the Atheist YouTube world, we noticed that there were not a lot of women. So we're like, hey, let's just bring them all together just to count them. And there are 5. No, I'm just kidding. No. There are many more.
I'm picturing like a criminal lineup with the height difference when you line them all up there.
We're all pretty short. But anyway, yeah. So, but we're always growing Women of Deconversion because we think that it's just important to hear female voices, especially since so many of the women who are not converted do so because of family and responsibilities that they think wouldn't really work well with their obligations. And so we just like to be the voice for those, for people who are still kind of like, we don't know. Are there even women who are atheists? But there are tons. And many of you know that. So
yeah, there are quite a few.
Quite a few.
Well, I would say everyone's pretty well represented in the atheist community. So everyone, there's lots of all of us. Let's just put it that way.
That's true. That's true. It just sometimes feels like there are a lot of men.
Yeah. They tend to be, I for whatever reason, probably because it's still somewhat of a, what do you call it? I don't want to say male-dominated society, but let's face facts, it practically still is. So they're more prominent. But that's changing.
Yes.
Not fast enough, in my opinion, but there you go. But anyways, let's get on to the deconversion stories here. And so which one of you would like to go first? And don't forget, I do like to pop in from time to time when I have something ridiculous to say. So.
Oh, sure. Heather, you go first, because I think it's easier to tell my story after you've told yours.
Okay. Ooh. The pressure's on. Okay. So Christine and I went to the same Christian church. We were come from like a non-denominational fundamentalist church. And so we've known each other for a very long time. And then we also went to the same Christian school that was affiliated with that church. And so that's how we know each other originally. But we actually were not very close when we were actually in school, because, as Christine will add when she shares her story, Christine was sort of deconverting much earlier than me. And so that put us at odds. Not like we were ever fighting or anything. I mean, we were amicable, but we just weren't as close because we had still very different worldviews at that point. So
you guys never came to blows?
No, oh, no, sadly, that would have been a more exciting story, but sadly, no. But we did, yeah. I mean, we just didn't really hang out one-on-one very much, and we just didn't really have a close relationship. And that was mainly because I was still very, very conservative, and I remained very conservative Christian all the way through until I started my master's degree. And that's kind of where I mean, the seeds were planted much earlier, as these, it's easier to look back and see that in hindsight. But I would say that it really started in full force when I moved out of the country and I was getting a master's degree. So there was lots of factors contributing to that, obviously.
What's your master's in, by the way?
My master's is in English literature.
Okay.
And so I was living in England at the time, getting the master's. So, and obviously, international travel, which I'm a huge fan of in general, also contributes to this. It's just great to get out of the country and get a sense of how big the world is and how different people are. So all of that, and then also better education, and specifically literature for me. The more I study literature, I mean, what I'm trained to do is basically to be a cultural critic in a lot of ways, to look at a text and think about it in relation to its time and how it's either reflective of its time or critical of its time or both. So when I was doing that for my degree, it became much more difficult for me, I think, to buy into the idea that the Bible is somehow different than any other text. So, what the logic of only this one text, for this one text, none of that applies. The Bible is this inspired word of God, right? So it just exists in this other celestial, right? Sphere that's infallible and not affected by who was writing it and all these things. That I bought into that very strongly as a child, and also a young adult. And then I really found it difficult to continue to believe that. So that was a big part of my deconversion, in addition to just, again, not living somewhere different in the world and meeting lots of different people. So,
well, yeah, being in England, I would say they're really quite secular over there. So you probably was faced with a lot of that, I imagine, when you were there.
Yeah. I think that's very true. There's, I don't know, and there are fundamentalists
Sure.
in England too, but yeah, it's a much smaller community, and it's not. I think the big difference is that they're not as big of a political or even cultural influence as they are in the United States. So
I would agree.
Yeah, they really exist on the fringe in England, and you don't have a Christian fundamentalist lobby. Political lobby like you do in the US. Anyway.
They're like the crazies yelling on the corner.
Yeah, exactly. It's, they're not as influential. So yeah, exactly. So that's how it started. And then I just kind of went from there. For a period of time, I was still in a transition where I thought, well, maybe it's just that I need to find a church that's more politically liberal. Because the other factor that is contributing to this is that my political beliefs were already changing when I went to undergrad. And so I was already wrestling with that. But there are, Christian denominations that are politically liberal. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, maybe I just need to find a Christian denomination that's like suits my political beliefs more. And so for a period of time, I was trying to do that. And then I really just realized that it wasn't about the political views. It was about just fundamentally, I couldn't believe anymore.
So what was it, do you think, that kind of triggered that for you?
I think just not, again, I'm trained to think very logically about believing, I'm only going to believe something if there's evidence for it. And so, and I'm sure that's a lot of the viewers can relate to that. I mean, so that basic idea was a big part of it, in addition to what I already said about the Bible. But those things go hand in hand. I mean, I just couldn't accept the logic of, why this particular text, when there are thousands of other compilation texts about deities.
Oh yeah.
So to signal this one out and buy into the idea that this one is somehow unique, I just couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah, it's not completely unique, that's for sure. We already know that many of the stories in there were pretty much ripped off of older mythologies. So, and another thing that I quite often hear is some of the reason, and I still can't figure out why any women in general would want to follow this belief system. I made a post the other day about it, how women are subjugated. They're second-class citizens. They're property. Like how anyone would want to follow a deity that makes these kinds of proclamations about who women are supposed to be is beyond me.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's definitely, Christine and I both, and Women of Deconversion, talk about this too at different times. Yeah, I completely agree. Like that's a big part of it too for me. I think that played less of a role in my deconversion itself, but now plays a big role, certainly, in my critiques of Christianity and the church, and especially Christianity.
Kind of a hindsight thing, I suppose.
Yeah. It was, we grew up, maybe Christine wants to comment on this more, but our church, was very, very much subscribed to all of those ideologies of, meant like women were not allowed to have leadership positions in our church. Certainly in terms of marriage, there was lots of, coded language of, women are supposed to obey their husband.
Remain quiet, all that shit.
Yeah.
Stay on the bottom. Yeah.
What did you say?
Wait, stay on the bottom, stay on the top, on the bottom. I don't know. Anyway, no, it's just leave it alone.
Yeah.
You'll get your turn.
The missionary position was that's what I meant by stay on the bottom.
Yeah.
Only allowed.
Yeah, lay on your back and think of England. Yeah.
Think of England.
I love that. Yes. I don't know if that's true. I have not fact checked this, but supposedly Queen Victoria said that.
Oh, really?
That when she was having sex, and she was like giving this advice to other women, like basically just lay on your back and think of England.
Wow.
When you're having sex. Oh, anyway.
I used to get beige. I think I'll paint the ceiling beige.
Anyway, so definitely all of that. And combined with the gender stuff, like since we brought up sex already, like sex shaming, there was a lot of that kind of culture in our church that both Christine and I have definitely rejected. So that's my story.
Well, I want to dig a little deeper here.
Okay.
How did your family and friends from the church respond to this? Like, do they know still? Like, have you told anyone? Or
I told anyone. It's kind of funny. We do have a podcast. I think she's told
sure, but many people do that and still have family members that don't have a clue.
No, she actually does. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's true for me. Yes, that's true for me. But that is the irony of, especially in the internet age, having a podcast and going on to shows and being interviewed and having this very public presence. But it is true that So my parents know, but we haven't officially had a conversation about it. I mean, just isn't like they have to know or they have to suspect, but they don't know about the podcast. We've never actually sat down and talked about it. And but it's mostly just my parents, and my extended conservative family, like my grandparents, because to me, it's too stressful to have that conversation with people like my parents and grandparents who genuinely believe that hell is real. And
Oh, okay.
I find that difficult because from their perspective, it's really tragic. I mean, and so even though I don't agree, I can empathize with their
Sure.
perspective, like how devastating that would be if you really bought into hell as a real place and your daughter that you love is like, oh, I'm not a Christian, and then that's the
Yeah,
consequence.
and they're thinking you're bound for it, so that must play heavy on them, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I haven't really talked to them. I have talked to my sister. I have two sisters, and I am pretty open with my friends about it. In terms of other people, honestly, I don't have a relationship really with very many people from my church
Okay.
anymore, and that's to do with a lot of factors. Part of it is obviously deconverting, but I think a lot of it too is that I've moved around quite a bit. So Christine and I grew up in the upstate New York area, and that's where our church is. And I have since obviously, like, I've lived abroad, but also just I've moved around to several other cities in the U.S. because I'm pursuing higher degrees. So, I was getting a master's, and then I just finished a PhD in a different city. So I just, and now I'm getting ready to move again for a job. So anyway, so I just don't I don't have a lot of roots
Okay.
to my hometown. And so one of the side effects of that is that I don't really communicate with people in our church very often. And so I'm Facebook friends with some of them. And so they have to know that to some extent,
Right.
I'm, because I just, by the nature of my post and the fact that I'm not posting about church, although I never post anything explicitly that's atheist, but
Do you promote your podcast through there?
I don't. I know, and it's unfortunate because I want to, because we'd get more people, but I'm too scared. Just about mainly my parents and grandparents. I care less about. I wouldn't be bothered if someone from our church got mad, but I would be bothered if my
Well, yeah, people
parents
that matter
saw
to
it.
you is going to bother you more than some flunkies
Yeah,
from church. So
right.
Oh
So
man, yeah. But we were really close with everybody from church.
yeah, so it's a big loss for sure, and I think Christine's done a better job. I mean, again, you can comment more on this, but Christine does have, but you have like some actual like close relationships with people that used to go to, or that are still Christian and that are part of that community. But that's again, so that's just to say it's complicated, and so I think one of the things that's hard about deconverting for some people, maybe other people can relate to my experience, is that it is it's definitely a loss in a lot of ways. And that's one of the things that Christine and I really emphasize in our podcast, that obviously there's lots of positives to deconversion, but it is also really tough. And there are things that you lose. And one of the things that I've definitely lost is just that kind of community, and and I did have some very close relationships with some people at my church that have obviously fizzled.
well, losing a community is a tough thing to go through,
Mm.
but I'm sure by now you've realized that there's a community that you can, you know, I don't want to say be with, but there is an atheist community out there that's
Yeah.
there for support too, of course.
Yeah. And that's one of the great things about doing this podcast is we've met many other amazing people, and we've had great conversations on different interviews, and then we joined together with some other women to host this Women of Deconversion video. So yeah, I agree. I'm getting there. And obviously, like, I have I think that's also why friendships are so important to me. And I have a very good friend group now that are mostly, all atheists, also locally where I live. But the virtual community is really, that's exciting and reassuring as well. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it's just a matter of like recognizing that that's still important to have that kind of community, and then just finding a replacement or a better alternative to
Sure. The first time I heard about you guys was through the Seth Anders show, actually. So that's kind of when I started stalking you guys. See, I gotta find them. I gotta get them come on my show, kind of thing, right? So,
awesome.
Yeah, and I had Seth on too, which was pretty cool. So
awesome. Yeah. The internet's, everyone likes to talk shit about social media is terrible and it's ruining everyone, and blah blah blah.
Moments.
Yeah, and obviously there's some element of truth to that, but there is also, I think, sometimes that this positive side gets lost, which is that the internet's also great. It's great for forming communities, and especially for groups that are marginalized in some way.
Absolutely.
Agree.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Christine, you're up next. Here's the next contestant on. I don't even know what the hell. Deconversion stories with the idiot Stick Neil. There you go.
So what makes it easier is, like, Heather's very good at giving the good fundamentalist foundation of our background. I was sort of like a lost sheep from the very beginning. Black sheep, lost sheep,
I hear you.
I was black and lost. But so and now I like that now. I like being lost.
Yeah, now you own that shit. Right?
Now I'm like, okay. And so Heather's a lot better, like I said, at sort of giving the idea of what our church was, because she can paint it a little better in terms of the, I don't know, she's just better. She's just better than me. So,
thank you.
Great. Well, anyway, although at this time she dove right into like, I was ready to leave by this time. So, so I'll give a little bit more base for how we grew up and where we grew up. If you want, Neil, I won't go too far if you don't want, but
you share whatever you want.
Okay.
I just got to shut my phone up. That's all. It's apparently it's making all kinds of noises now.
Your phone is blowing up. You're popular.
It's yeah. Well, I don't know about that. It's just the
you are
idiots.
Very popular. You're definitely
on Twitter there in the Twitter groups.
Nice.
I'm a member of a bunch, so they're all yakking back and forth, and I get the bing 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 bing. It's like whoa.
Yeah.
It's like I'm actually playing Mario or something.
Did you level up? That's
See, that's the coin noise. I was the little coin noise.
Very nice.
For a while, I had the mushroom noise, but that was annoying as hell.
Oh, yes, that would be annoying. So anyway, okay. My favorite phrase is "so anyway." So you'll notice if you listen. So anyway, so yeah.
You were about to say it.
We grew up together-ish. Heather came to the school when I was in 10th grade. She was in 9th. So we're a year apart, which she didn't mention. Did you mention? I don't think she mentioned. Which also sort of was the reason why we were in different groups, because even though we were only a year apart and the school was very small, it was about 40 kids, the strongest personalities in the school at that time, when I was in 10th grade, she was in 9th, were in our 2 classes. Mm-hmm. And so we were very, like, we loved each other. That no question. If someone was like, "Oh my God, do you like her?" I'd be like, "Yeah, she's so smart. She's beautiful. She's great." We would have good talks. We didn't like ignore each other, but we weren't, when we're talking about like being close with people, like we're talking like check, like, can you help me get my first tampon in close? Like we were very,
oh yes, and that was
very close.
well, no, we won't share this on air.
Yeah, we don't. But anyway, so we were very. Heather and I were not that close at that time, and so I just wanted to sort of give the picture to people that like we actually were pretty close for a high school, because there weren't a lot of kids. You just got to associate with pretty much everyone. People that were very different from you, and people that were alike. And so it was really special, really unique, I think. And that sort of lends to the fact that the loss.
Someone's
right?
echoing, guys.
I know. It's not, I don't think it's me. I have headphones on. Heather, are you playing the show? Okay.
Strange.
I guess it stopped.
Yeah, it has stopped.
It's me. I just have double voice.
It's a trick of the voice. I got it.
Yeah, I can also DJ. So anyway, so there's sort of this other sense of loss. So it's echoing again. It's driving me insane.
Okay, I can see if it's mine. I mean, keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I will. I'll do it quieter.
But it sounds like it's coming out of somebody's speakers as well.
Okay, sounds good. So what I was saying was there was a bigger loss than you would think in like a regular church. People go to school in a different place, they go to public school or whatever, then they come to church and they gather and they hang out and they meet their church friends in a different way. But we lived with the people that we went to school with. We did taekwondo together. We did dance together. We after
I
school.
took taekwondo too.
I know, nice. Yeah. I can do the first one. After that, I can't do anything.
Can't do shit anymore. I can't even lift my leg up. So when we talk about like losing people, it's not just our families that were disappointing. It's people we, lived with. We lived with each other. It was just the only thing we did apart was sleep, really. It was always like I'm going to her house or I'm hanging out with them or whatever. So I just wanted to like paint that picture for everybody, because I think sometimes people think deconversion, you leave your church, but then you've got your high school friends or you've got your college friends. We all went to college together too.
Right. Yeah.
And so we sort of
were they religious-based colleges or
no? Surprisingly, it was just a local. We're very locally like community based. So it was sort of like, you're definitely going to so and so college, right? Like everybody sort of just went to the college that was in our town.
Yeah, because it was a good. It's in the SUNY system, so it's
SUNY.
Yeah, State University of New York. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I love it. Do it again. Anyway,
just to emphasize, it was a good quality college.
It was. Yeah, we weren't.
I suppose otherwise you probably wouldn't have gone there. So it had to have some form of merit.
Exactly. But also, we were all. Also, when I graduated, I was a little worried because, being in a Christian school, not knowing, we didn't take the normal standardized tests that other kids took. So it was sort of, it was also part insecurity. Like I knew other people got in there and I was really poor. So it's not like I was going to spend $200 on like 5 Ivy League colleges for, I know I probably could have, at this point, I know I could have gotten that stuff waived, but even so, like I was salutatorian in my class, which had 6 people in it. And I didn't think like I had a very competitive edge, which going, I don't know if I did yet. I didn't really have the worldview I do now. I think I could get in now, but I don't think I could have gotten in then.
Now you can take it all on.
That was the like wimpiest I've ever done. So anyway,
your arms are bigger than mine now, so I don't worry about it.
So I just wanted to give that idea. Then we all sort of went to the same school, and in college is when I deconverted. I had doubted for a really long time. I think the first step of my deconversion came when this prophet dude came to our
Wait, what?
prophet dude. That's what they're called, right?
Prophet dude? Oh, I'm thinking like dudism. This is just your opinion, man.
Yeah, well, that's how I feel now. But so when this evangelist, I'll say,
Okay.
came to our church and prophesied over one of my friends, and I said, like, hey God, like, just have him tap me, just have him like say something, and not necessarily just focus on this one person. This one person was, the pastor's kid, and got a lot of this kind of attention, like with the prophecies and sort of you're going to be great. She was very charismatic, cool. I like her. I love her, to death. So, and like, did God care? I really want to know, do you care about like the black sheep, the one who's really trying, and not really succeeding visually? And he like showed me that he didn't. And so, I didn't get any notice or nod or anything. And so I was like, that was the first step. Yeah, that was the first step when I was like, no one's up there.
Fuck you.
Right. It started out with like confusion and anger, and then sort of I went back and forth, like from being really rebellious to being, I wasn't really ever rebellious. I was just sort of doing my own thing. I think there's a difference. Like, I was never like, well, I don't want to do that because it's a whatever. But I loved wearing high slitted skirts. What can I say? Like, that's my jam, I got so many pink slips for that.
Really?
I really did. I really did. I got 12 weeks of in-school suspension for making out with someone. Yeah. So there's a lot of, and I still would find myself like in tears because I felt so much guilt. I was so wrong. I was so against the faith. Like, I didn't belong, and I always, in the beginning, I said, when I still kind of believe in God, I would just say, like, I'm just not chosen. Because, the scripture, many are called, few are chosen. I'm like, it's just not me. He just doesn't want me. It's clear, because I like am trying so hard and failing so hard.
Well, you keep wearing those skirts, so.
Yeah,
I'm thinking you like them because they're probably, you could move better in them, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and I have nice legs.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Like, okay, if you got it, flaunt it, right?
Right, and it wasn't like I didn't feel the same. Like, I was like, I don't get how there were a lot of things I didn't understand in the beginning, like how nudity was like how God made us, and we just like, but we have to wear like turtlenecks. I'm like,
right.
Eve never wore. Adam and Eve didn't wear turtlenecks. They covered their parts for security and for protection, Like,
yeah, but also even that there isn't anything in there about that.
That's
actually.
right. That's right.
No.
There's
That's just for like Christian sentiment, like
true.
sensibility, like.
Right, exactly.
It does talk about modesty in there at some point, I think, though.
Yeah, but modesty.
Yeah, but
means
not
something different. Oh, yeah, I was going to say modesty means something different in that language, at that
Sure.
time. Like, it
Okay.
means like meekness and like teachability and pride. The opposite of pride means humility. So I think, modesty is different to them.
Yeah, and I just meant in terms of the book of Genesis. There isn't like specifically something about Adam and Eve having like fig leaves, but yeah, there is stuff about women being modest in women need to be modest in the New Testament, like in the books that Paul wrote.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Covering their faces. Yeah. And there's a lot in I think there's probably got to be some in the Torah. There's got to be some.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah, there's
yeah.
Proverbs. Remember? Oh, you might not have been there. Okay, so I'm sorry, I keep interrupting, but just reminding me. Yeah, one time example of this, I was part of a Bible study. I don't think you were a part of this group, Christine, but I was part of an all ladies Bible study, and we read Proverbs. I think it's Proverbs 31, which is all about like a good wife.
Yeah.
It's like a good wife sits at home and weaves. Like literally, this is
weaves.
And we read this as like a guideline for how to be as women, and it's all about modesty and meekness and quietness.
So it's certainly in there anyway, but I just didn't get it, right? Like I don't know whether it was my mom was trying to be an evangelist and, you know, tried to be a lead in the church. So maybe she would played a part in me not getting that, you know, because my dad was not an alpha male. He's a beta male. My mother is definitely an alpha female. So, so certainly I didn't see it, you know, the same as other people did, where their mothers were subservient to their fathers or whatever.
Did your mom kind of rule the roost?
Yeah, my family is a different story. My mom, I love her so much. But she is cut from like
different cloth.
I don't even know if it's cloth.
We use tin snip. She's cut from a different metal.
Yeah, she's like a kind of woman. So, so my mom didn't rule the roost, but sort of her career and her educational pursuits brought us wherever we wanted to go. And she was very like driven, but for her own like selfish direction, which she thought she was following God. So I think it was God's direction, but blah, blah, blah. Anyway. So yeah, she went to India for like a month at one time to evangelize, and
wow.
Yeah, also ironic, but maybe we'll talk about that. I'll tell you why someday. So anyway, so I haven't even talked about why when I left. So what happened?
You're building up to it. It's okay.
I know, it's exciting.
Very exciting, yeah.
Yeah. So I think for a while I went to Basic, which is Brothers and Sisters in Christ. It's a college Christian group, and I went fairly regularly. For a while I was the I don't know, treasurer or something. I don't know, maybe as communications chair or something. And we were having a spaghetti dinner on Valentine's Day because we wanted to like express, well, if you don't have someone to love you, Jesus loves you, kind of thing.
What does that have to do with spaghetti?
Everything.
You think maybe if you were Pastafarians or something, that'd be you wear colanders on your head. And
anyway, so I stood up in a class in a class of like I think 150 to 200 people. It was my mass communications class, and I said, I just wanted to make this announcement. We're having this thing. Please come. And I said something about Jesus loving you, which is so bold. And I have like now I have no idea how bold. Like looking back, I'm like, whoa, girl, you were bold.
You were like, what was I thinking, kind of thing?
Nah, not really. There was no shy. There still isn't really much.
Yeah, no. Chrissy is the alpha in our group.
It shows.
Yeah, but I love it. I love that about you. Okay, sorry, I'm cutting you off again.
I love it. It's fine. It's good. So I stood up, and then this guy came up to me and was like, "Hey, let me know how that goes." And I was like, "You should come." And he was like, "I'm good." So he didn't say it that way, but then he asked me later after it had happened, like how it went. And I was like, yeah, it was all right. And then he was like, asked me to like have lunch, and that wasn't like a date thing. It was sort of like, hey, are you going to the cafeteria sort of thing? And we just talked for a while. And I mean, in a while, I don't mean 4 hours. I mean, like we became friends. and he would ask me like about my belief, and I was able to stand up for it intelligently, which I can't do anymore, by the way.
There's a weird thing that happens there, because suddenly, you used to think of yourself as doing that, speaking about it intellectually, and then you pass this line and you're like, okay, nothing about that is intellectual.
I don't entirely believe that if you can base it on a really strong element of faith, but I know what you're saying.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
But yeah, so for me, and he was like, okay, like this girl, like, kind of knows what she's talking about, but I don't believe this. Anyway, so he asked me if I had ever doubted. And I think what happened is something clicked in me. And I was like, yeah, like the whole time. Like, I've always doubted. And I didn't realize it until someone asked me, like, have you doubted? Because I thought I was steadfast. I knew I was wrong. I knew I was bad. I knew I was a sinner. I knew I was not good at being a Christian. But what I didn't see and now I realize, like, that was doubt. All of it, like so much of it was just
like a little epiphany almost.
Yeah, like an epiphany. And so he sort of clicked something on for me, like, yeah, no, I've doubted a ton, and I still do, and I doubt more than I believe. And that's when I was like, oh, I am not a Christian. Oh my goodness. And it was
wham, somebody get the number of that truck.
it's funny because it was kind of like a truck, but it didn't feel like it. It felt like it'd been building up for so long, and it just like
the burst or something, or
like how the water dripping on the top of a glass. And then like one drop makes it overflow.
Ripple. Oh yeah.
That is what it was. That's what when the glass just broke, and I was like, oh, all right. I can dig this. And I stopped. I went to basic less often, very quickly. And I mean, Heather knows, like, I didn't go to church ever when I was a Christian either. Like, I hated waking up on Sunday. It was such
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. I don't miss that at all. I love that Sunday is like actually a sleep-in day now for me.
Yeah,
they should have named Sunday Sleep Day.
He did rest. He rested. Why are we not resting?
Yes. Why do we have to be here? We're supposed to be resting.
Exactly. Anyway, so
wait a minute. What does an omnipotent being need with rest anyways? That's kind of what I always wondered.
Oh, but yeah, I don't know.
Good point.
Maybe it's a lot of like, I mean, actually, he probably just wanted to. To be fair, he's just like, well, fuck, I'm done.
Yeah. This whole extra day now.
I'm gonna chill for 24 hours. Yeah, right. So yeah, and now then 12 years went by, and Heather deconverted, and I was like, hey, I went through all that, and she was like, yeah, you're so smart, you're so informed, and I'm like, no, I'm just old and done. I'm just old and through it.
Bitter.
Yeah, old and through it. And so we started talking, and then she was like, there's kind of a niche for this, talking about it in this emotional way. There's so many podcasts and groups out there that talk about it in a debate way, in a and I think, Neil, you're like one of those that doesn't. You like open up and you're like, how did you deconvert? Like, how did it go? And you sort of give the emotional journey.
Yeah, but they're important stories. And people need to know that you can do it. It's not always easy, but it can be done.
Yeah. Definitely. And I do think, I think it's great. And the more I move in, I see this dichotomy of like the debaters and the lovers in the atheist community. And, Heather and I are really trying to be in the lover.
You guys, that comes across in your podcast. I'll tell you that right now. Definitely. It definitely does. Because the way you guys talk about it, it shows a lot of caring is there. So
and I think
don't worry about that.
Yeah, and empathy, really,
Yeah.
I think,
Mhm.
is what we sort of
Good word.
base everything.
Yeah. I mean, we had a conversation where we were like, we want our Christian friends to be able to listen to our podcast and actually like understand where we're coming from. And that has happened. We have a couple of friends that listen regularly that are still strong Christians, and then they want to talk to us about it. And I think that's a good sign. Because if we went in like a debatey, like, everyone who's a Christian is just illogical and not intellectual and stupid, and then you're just going to alienate. Even though there are moments. So
Sure, it goes through my head too. I just had a chat with a guy the other day who was calling believers stupid. And I go, you know what, dude? It's not about being stupid. They're not stupid people. I've met many ex-believers that are extremely intelligent. What happens is you're indoctrinated into a belief system from birth. You know no better because you're told all this stuff is quote unquote truth by people you trust and love. So you're believing it. And eventually, well, not everyone, but a lot of people eventually start to see through that. And they come clear of it. And who knows, maybe they might think, geez, I was an idiot back then, but it's not about being stupid or being brainwashed. Technically, it's indoctrination is you can be indoctrinated into many different types of things.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
religious belief is just one of those types of things.
Yeah.
And it takes a bit to come out of that, especially when it's been hammered into you from day one, literally. Right. So I call people like that brave and courageous to be able to fight those kinds of beliefs off, or not fight, but find their way through it.
Right.
Yeah. And I can't knock someone. I have trouble. I mean, depends on what they're passionate about. Certainly, racism and bigotry, like I have issues with, but I have trouble knocking people who are passionate, and so even Christians who are like, believe, who can feel it and who can be like in it. I don't follow what you're saying, but I like the way you're saying it,
Yeah.
Sort of like, who said that? I don't agree with what you're saying, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. Some history.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a few people make that statement, dill hunting being one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, so even the Christians who aren't ready, who haven't gotten to that point where they see, or maybe never will, I like to stand up for them too, because I like, just because they're indoctrinated doesn't make them not intelligent. They might be able to see things that we don't see, like, I once talked to someone who saw DNA as like proof of God, proof of concept. And there's a quote, I just read it, and it was,
you sound like me. It was like,
I
hey,
know.
we're gonna shake the marbles up here.
I hate it so much. But someone said about quantum mechanics, like, you're an atheist if you study quantum mechanics, you're an atheist until you like get to the point when when you believe in God again, because you get so deep that you're like, right, exactly. And I don't agree with that person.
Big boson, technically, but
yeah. I don't agree with that person, but I get it. I can see how you can see God in DNA and order. I get it.
I hear that a lot too. DNA appears like a code, but it's not a code. It's merely just a set of instructions.
Yeah, I know. The
and most of them don't do shit. Right? So
yeah,
they're done DNA. They've been through generations of your family line. So
right, and then like telomeres. Like, if there was a God, wouldn't they be like? I don't know. Why are they so packed? I don't get it. Anyway, there are other reasons, not biological, that I'm an atheist. So, or an agnostic. I don't know.
If you're, I always say I'm kind of in agreement and with Matt on this too. If you're agnostic, you're pretty much an atheist, because
Right.
the
Exactly.
agnostic thing says, I don't know. It's about knowledge, or, well, of course, someone like Steve might disagree, but it is deals with knowledge as part of at least the etymology of the word or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Right. Versus God. Yeah. And I don't worship a God, even if like I think, no, I don't. I don't think anything. That's the thing. When it comes to God, I'm like, I really don't.
Don't
Because
consider him. Don't think about him. Then
Right.
you're
I mean,
an atheist.
right. Right. Anyway, so that's my story.
Come on, Christine. Come to the camp. We have nice fires and marshmallows.
As long as you have chocolate.
Of
And-
course. Oh, come on.
Yeah.
I'm a chocoholic.
I really am better with, I'm happy with the sin. Let's just, like, is there sin at
Sinning
the
is fun.
Yeah, sinning. I know. That's the thing. Like all the sins are all the fun things. Like
Right.
drugs,
Like-
sex, rock and roll. Like,
What are
What if
you
diet
talking
food
about?
tastes good?
I don't know what you're talking about. I get so full when I pray.
Oh,
What are you,
wow.
a Breatharian now? Those crazy ass people that think they can live just by breathing. Well, obviously that helps, but you got to put some stuff in there too.
Right.
I recommend beer. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes. PSA for, you should just like get a sponsor, like get sponsored by a beer company.
Well, if I do, I want it to be one of my favorite all-time classic Canadian Pilsners, and that's these ones there.
Ooh, there we go. Yeah.
And they have little bunnies on the can, and they were doing it for a while where they would move them around the can, and you had to find them. And if you're able to locate them, they send you a T-shirt or some shit. I don't
That's
know.
amazing.
Oh, that's cool. Wait,
I never got a T-shirt.
what's the brand? Because I don't think I've had I had a Pilsner when I was in Toronto, but I don't think it was that.
It's called Old Style Pilsner.
Okay. Oh, okay. Very creative.
Yeah. Got a picture of a little native village and some horses and a wagon train thingy there.
Okay.
So it's like a little pioneer beer or whatever.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Very cool.
But in the summertime, I do like Pilsners because they're crisp and they're tasty and it's just, and I still drink like the super dark stuff too. Yeah.
I'm such a weirdo. I like Guinness and dirty martinis.
Oh.
Interesting.
The only two drinks, and gin. They have to be gin.
Gin.
Yeah, gin martinis. Oh, see,
Gin
I'm
makes me beat people up.
Oh, interesting.
I get when I was a bouncer in a bar, and if you got gin into me, somebody was getting their ass kicked.
That's so funny.
Oh, jeez. I got bouncer stories for you for another day.
That's a different podcast.
I like that though. That should be a podcast.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Days of bouncing. That's just
I love it. Yeah.
So, are you guys up for doing a little bit of an after party hangout with us?
Oh yeah, totally. That'd be fun.
Totally? Okay, cool.
As long as my daughter's, not wailing.
All right, guys, you know what to do. If you guys want to be involved in the after party, let me know through the group chat that most of you are in on Twitter. And if you're not in that chat, go ahead and hit me up on Twitter Messenger, and I'll send you a link if you'd like to join in. We already have, there's 3 of us here now, so remember, there's going to only be room for 7 more. So anyone that would like to be involved, let me know. And Heather, Christine, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me this afternoon.
Thanks.
It was great to finally have this actually work properly, because the last time was like, it made the Titanic look like a picnic. Let's put it that way. We started pretty fast.
Yeah, Neil is on our next podcast, which will come out in the next 24 hours or so. So just so you know, he's on it.
Woo!
I'm on your. The little blurb that I did.
The blurb.
Awesome.
I'm like doing it, and I'm like, I probably did it like 40 something times. Like this like they wanted like 30 seconds. How do I put all this into 30 seconds? So I just kind of blurted something up. Went, okay, that's good enough. And I send it to you. It works. Anyway, all right. Well, again, guys, thank you so much for joining me, and thanks everyone for tuning in and hanging out with us. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, because I sure did, and you guys did. I'm sure you guys did, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I always have to check. Anyway, you know what to do. I'll have a fresh link out pretty soon for an after party, probably within the next 10 minutes or so. I really have to go potty or take a tinkle or whatever the PC word is for that these days. I don't know. But all right, so you guys know what to do. All the links to their YouTube channel, their Twitter, their website. There's a couple extra links where you can find their podcasts, like Apple and I think I can't remember the other one, but they're all down there. And I also have links for anyone who's recently deconverted, with like Recovering from Religion, the Secular Therapy Project, and the Clergy Project. Links are all in the description below. So check those out if you need to or want to. And until next time, guys, like the late, great Christopher Hitchens always said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. And we'll see you guys next time.